I arrived at the local movie theater, eager to see the latest blockbuster hit. The place was buzzing with excitement as people rushed around to grab their tickets and snacks. As I stood in line, I overheard a commotion behind me. I turned to see a middle-aged woman with a young girl in tow, making a scene at the cashier. "I demand a refund. This movie is too violent for my little angel," she screeched, pointing at her daughter. The cashier, a timid teenager, tried his best to explain that they couldn't offer refunds for tickets that had already been purchased. But the entitled mother wasn't having it. She started to throw a tantrum, making a huge fuss in front of everyone in line. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at the absurdity of it all. This woman was clearly just looking for attention. But little did I know, she was about to make me a part of her spectacle. The entitled mother turned her glare towards me, sizing me up from head to toe. You look like a reasonable person. Do you think this movie is appropriate for children?" she spat out. I sighed, already anticipating what was to come. "Ma'am, I don't think it's my place to decide what's appropriate for your child. That's your responsibility as a parent." The entitled mother's face twisted with anger. "How dare you? Who do you think you are, telling me how to parent my child?" I tried to defuse the situation. "I'm not telling you how to parent your child. I'm just saying that it's not up to me to make that decision for you." But the entitled mother wasn't having any of it. She demanded that I speak to the manager, insisting that I tell him that the movie wasn't appropriate for children. I refused, knowing that I had nothing to do with this woman's problems. Finally, she stormed off in a huff, dragging her daughter behind her. I was glad to be rid of her, but I couldn't help but feel sorry for the little girl who was clearly afraid of her own mother. As I settled into my seat to watch the movie, I tried to put the entitled mother out of my mind. But just as the credits were rolling, I heard a commotion behind me. I turned to see the same entitled mother from earlier, now throwing popcorn in the face of the cashier. "How dare you refuse to refund my money?" she screamed, throwing handfuls of popcorn at the poor kid. I was horrified. This woman was clearly out of control. I jumped out of my seat and ran over to try and stop her. "Hey, knock it off! What's wrong with you?" I yelled. The entitled mother turned her rage toward me, throwing a handful of popcorn in my face. I wiped it off, now feeling completely disgusted with her behavior. Thankfully, security arrived on the scene and escorted the entitled mother out of the theater. As she left, she continued to scream and curse, making a huge scene in front of everyone. I felt sorry for the little girl who had to witness her mother's tantrum, but I also felt grateful for my own upbringing. I had been raised to be respectful of others and to take responsibility for my own actions. It was a reminder that not everyone is raised the same way, and that entitlement can sometimes bring out the worst in people. I woke up the other day to my phone buzzing on my bedside table. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and groggily checked the time. It was only 8 a.m., too early for anyone to be calling me. I reached for my phone and saw a missed call from an unknown number. I shrugged it off and decided to start my day. I got dressed and headed out to grab some breakfast. As I walked down the street, I saw a woman with 2 kids walking towards me. The kids were crying and the woman looked frazzled. As we passed each other, one of the kids grabbed my leg and started crying harder. The woman looked at me expectantly, like it was my responsibility to calm her child down. I quickly pulled away and kept walking, feeling a little annoyed. I arrived at my favorite breakfast spot and ordered my usual coffee and bagel. As I sat down, I noticed a woman at the table next to me with a look of entitlement on her face. She was loudly talking on her phone, complaining about something. I tried to ignore her and enjoy my breakfast, but her voice was grating on my nerves. Suddenly, the woman hung up her phone and turned to me. "Excuse me?" she said. "Do you mind watching my purse while I use the restroom?" I raised an eyebrow in surprise, but reluctantly agreed. As she walked away, I couldn't help but feel like I had just been roped into something. The woman was gone for what felt like an eternity. I started to wonder if she had forgotten about me and her purse altogether, but finally, she emerged from the restroom, looking flustered. "Thank you so much for watching my purse," she said, taking it from me. "I just had the worst encounter with a store employee. He was so rude to me and my kids." I can't believe how entitled some people can be. I rolled my eyes and went back to my breakfast, not interested in her drama. But as I finished up and got ready to leave, the woman approached me again. "Excuse me," she said. "Can I ask you a favor?" I braced myself for what was coming next. My car broke down a few blocks away and I need a ride. Can you give me and my kids a lift? I couldn't believe the nerve of this woman. But before I could even respond, she was already gathering up her things and heading out the door. I hesitated for a moment but decided to follow her. As we walked down the street, I noticed a man following us. He looked angry and I started to feel uneasy. The woman led us to a nearby alley where a beat-up car was parked. She started to load her kids and her bags into the car, but the man had caught up to us. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Why are you taking my kids?" The woman tried to defend herself, but it was clear that the man was the father of the kids and was not interested in listening. He started to advance towards her, and I knew I had to do something. I stepped in front of the woman and her kids, trying to defuse the situation. "Hey, man, calm down," I said, putting my hands up in surrender. "Let's talk about this." The man glared at me, his fists clenched. "Stay out of this, buddy. This is between me and her." But I stood my ground, refusing to back down. The man was very angry and started to have a very heated conversation with the entitled mother, and he turned to me and said, "And you, where were you taking my kids?" I said, "I'm not taking your kids anywhere. This lady asked me for a ride." She actually didn't ask. She kinda invited herself. The heated conversation continued, and I couldn't stay more in this unnecessary drama, so I left. The woman and her kids were safe for now, I guess, as I saw the man was hugging the kids when I left, but I knew I couldn't stick around. I headed back to my daily routine, shaking my head in disbelief at the whole encounter. I couldn't believe how entitled that woman had been, trying to take those kids by force from their own father, and to top it off, she had the audacity to ask me for a ride. I remember the day like it was yesterday. I was walking home from my favorite comic book store, my hands filled with the latest issues of my favorite series. I was so engrossed in my thoughts about the latest plot twist that I almost didn't notice the woman walking towards me. She was middle-aged with an imperious air about her that immediately set me on edge. As she approached, she shot me a disapproving glance, and I could tell that she was the sort of person who believed she was better than everyone else. "Excuse me," she said in a nasal voice. "I need to get by." I moved to the side to let her pass, but she pushed past me roughly, jostling me in the process. "Watch it," I snapped, my irritation rising. The woman turned on me, her face twisted with anger. "Do you know who I am?" she demanded. I raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Should I? "I am Karen," she declared, as if that was meant to mean something to me. I shrugged, still not interested. And I demand that you show me some respect. I am the most important person in this neighborhood, and you should treat me accordingly." I rolled my eyes, completely fed up with this woman. "Sure, whatever you say. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get home." As I turned to walk away, Karen grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "I'm not finished with you yet," she hissed. I yanked my arm out of her grasp, my heart racing with anger. "What the hell is your problem?" I demanded. "My problem," she spat, "is that you have no respect for your betters. You're just a worthless little nobody, and you should be grateful for any attention I deign to give you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman was completely unhinged. "You know what?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're right. I am a worthless nobody, and you're a shining example of humanity. Congratulations." Karen's face turned red with rage, and before I knew what was happening, she had swung at me, her hand connecting with my cheek. I stumbled backwards, my hands flying up to my face in shock. "What the hell?" Karen charged at me again, but this time I was ready. I dodged her blow and stepped back, my heart racing with adrenaline. "You're insane!" I yelled. "You're the one who's insane! How dare you talk to me like that? I demand an apology?" "You've got to be kidding me. You just physically attacked me, and now you're demanding an apology. You're delusional." Suddenly, The sound of a police siren pierced the air and a patrol car pulled up beside us. The officer stepped out of the car and asked, "What's going on here?" Before I could even open my mouth, Karen immediately launched into a tirade, screaming about how I had attacked her and how she was the victim. The officer listened patiently, his eyes flicking back and forth between us. When Karen finished her rant, the officer turned to me. "What's your side of the story?" I explained what had happened, my hands shaking with anger. The officer nodded, his face impassive. "Karen," he said, turning back to her, "I'm going to need you to calm down and come with me." But Karen wasn't having any of it. She continued to rant and rave, screaming about how she was going to make sure I was punished for my disrespect. At this point, the officer had had enough. He got out of the car and walked over to Karen, telling her to put her hands behind her back. She refused, flailing her arms wildly and continuing to scream. The officer tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't listen. Finally, he grabbed her arm and attempted to restrain her. But Karen wasn't going down without a fight. She kicked and thrashed, trying to break free from the officer's grip. In the end, it took 2 more officers to subdue her and get her into the patrol car. As they drove away, I was left standing on the sidewalk, still in shock over what had just happened. I couldn't believe that a simple encounter with a stranger had turned into something so violent and chaotic. But at the same time, I felt a sense of relief that Karen had been stopped before she could do any more harm. My parents are divorced, and I now live 100 meters away from my mom and stepdad. Oh, joy! Mom has on several occasions suggested and insisted that my stepdad adopts me, female 32, unmarried, and with no children. Her reason is that if you die before me, your dad gets half of what you own. According to her, she deserves all of what I have achieved in my life, even though she had helped me earn exactly 0% of it, while also making my life 2,000% harder. She thinks this is 100% sane behavior, but it doesn't feel like it to me. Edit. Thanks for all the answers. I live in Scandinavia, and I will be looking into writing a will and who I can include and exclude. I live this close to my parents because it's the only option I have at the moment. They own the house I live in, and I rent it from them. Moving here was at the absolute bottom of the list of options, but it's this or living nowhere. It's very hard to find a place here, but I am working on it. Hopefully, in the future, I won't even live in the same country. So, for some backstory that started the most recent event, we had a horrible ice storm, and everyone lost power and Wi-Fi, in which my mom said the F slur and T slur to me because I'm not gay, as well as told me that she'd be happier if I was never born. A few days after that, my family went on a nice trip to one of the local cities, and when we came home, we still had no power, and my mom got drunk and told my dad she wanted to leave him and then yelled at me. Now to what happened. So my dad called my mom out for what she says and how she pushes her stress on me and my dad. My mom had a fit and now is all pissy that she was called out for how selfish she is. So I'm not sure what to do about this.